Hello, everyone that will be joining us on Facebook Live. I am just allowing the technology to do what it's supposed to do and get this live started. There is a little bit of a delay from the platform that we're using, StreamYard, to actually being on Facebook. So just want to give it a little bit of time to work its magic. But welcome everyone to the Convo. My name is Ebony Chappelle, and I lead programs and communication for Leadership Indianapolis. We are a nonprofit located here in the city that focuses on making sure that the leadership pipeline in Indy is multicultural, that it is multi-generational, and that it is also collaborative. And the way that we do that work is through a variety of different programs, including this discussion series called The Convo, where we go in depth with local leaders on a variety of topics and get to know what their leadership journey looks like and hear about all of the amazing work that they're doing in the community. So today we are going to hear from Dr. Warren Morgan with IPS, Ebonye Crowe of Warren Township, and Greg Van Slambrook of Brebeuf Jesuit. So if you have any questions or comments as we go along, be sure to drop them into the comment box below. We may pull them up on screen and allow you to be interactive in this conversation with our amazing panelists for today. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring everyone onto the screen. Hello, everyone. How are you all doing this afternoon?
Hello. Good to be here.
Good afternoon.
Yes, happy to have you all here. So, Ebony, you are first on my screen and also a fellow Ebony, which is, I think, is the
Ebony's are
first.
wonderful people.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. I think this is my first time ever interviewing an Ebony, so this is also cool. So, it's pretty awesome. But Ebony was born and raised in Indy and is a proud Far East Sider. She is a grade level administrator for Warren Township Schools, where she has the pleasure of serving educators, students, families, and the Far East Side community. She's a proud member of the Melanated Leaders Collective, where they actively do the inner work of becoming stronger leaders in education. In addition to all of that wonderfulness that I just mentioned, Ebony also is a facilitator in the professional areas of equity, culturally responsive teaching, CRT, maybe as you guys have come to understand it, and social emotional learning within her district and in the city of Indianapolis. She is also the co-host of the Great Area Media, which is Black owned and produced media platform here in the city. Thank you for being here, Ebony.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Up next on our screen is Dr. Warren Morgan, who serves as the Chief Academic Officer for Indianapolis Public Schools. Prior to joining IPS, Dr. Morgan served as Executive Director of Teach for America St. Louis. He also has the distinction of having worked for Presidents Obama and Trump as a White House Fellow. He is an alum of the Leadership St. Louis program and has an executive certificate in nonprofit leadership, from Washington University, St. Louis, and is an active member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Thank you for being here, Dr. Morgan.
So happy to be here.
Absolutely. And last but certainly not least is Greg Van Slambrook, who serves as principal of Brebeuf Jesuit Preparatory School in Indianapolis. And he is in his 10th year in that position. So congratulations to you, Greg. Berbuff, for those of you that aren't aware, is a private Catholic and Jesuit high school of 841 students, grades 9 through 12. As a school leader, Greg has focused on building a strong school culture of continuous improvement based on the school's unique identity and mission as a Jesuit institution. The school's core values, the education of the whole person, a caring and diverse community, and the call to create a more just, humane, and loving world are foundational to his leadership approach. Greg grew up in Carmel and has called Indianapolis home since 2004 and is a cheerleader for our city. He has benefited from professional development programs, including Stanley K. Lacey Executive Leadership Program through Leadership Indianapolis. And Greg, what class are you with SKL?
Oh, I should know that off the top of my head. It was 2 years ago. What class was that, Ebony?
2 years ago. Now you're putting me on the spot.
I can tell you.
So, yes, you were our pre-pandemic class.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we kind of bled into the pandemic. We ended in the pandemic, unfortunately, but we had an awesome
Wow.
class.
Yeah, so you were of the group that we delivered special bags to and just dropped on your porch.
That's right.
That was one of the first things I did when I joined the organization, because I joined Leadership Indianapolis at the start of the pandemic, so in
Nice.
April of 2020. So
We were all
I don't know
making
what we
home
were
deliveries
thinking.
at that time in the world,
Yeah,
like graduation deliveries and all sorts of things. Yeah.
all of that stuff, all of that. Well, again, thank you all so much for being here. Greg, I'll go ahead and get started with you. Tell us a little bit about what your leadership journey has been like, being a part of the Berbuff Jesuit family.
Well, I've been at Brebeuf for a long time, since I moved back to Indianapolis in 2004 and was a faculty member, a full-time teacher. And then I pursued the Master's in Educational Leadership at IUPUI, which brought me into the leadership roles that happened to open up here, kind of time and place kind of thing. But growing up or coming up through much of my career development in one place is interesting. I mean, there's positives and negatives to that, right? I have a deep knowledge of this place, and at this point, one of the veteran people, and I know everybody and have hired the majority of them myself. And we're a relatively small institution, one building school, independent in that sense. Although we're a network of Jesuit schools across the country, we have 75 teachers and then 140 employees. And so again, my length of time here has given me a chance to really know the place in a lot of depth. And then I also am aware, I think, that being in a place for that long kind of gives you some blind spots too. And the challenge of keeping yourself continuously open to learning when you feel like you've been doing it forever, you've been there forever, or people see you as having been a certain way, or they put you in a certain box maybe, and I put things in a certain box maybe. And so I see leadership in that kind of context as just continuously challenging myself to get out of that box, or to make sure I'm open to things coming that are going to challenge the way that we think about things, and that I think about things as an individual, as an educator. So that's how I think about that, in terms of how long I've been doing it.
That's awesome. I love that continuous commitment to learning, and being aware of the different opportunities to do so. Thank you so much. Dr. Morgan, same question for you. I know that you have transitioned to IPS from someplace else, but tell us a little bit about what your time has been like there so far.
Yeah. So though I'm recently back here in Indianapolis to take on this role, I'm not a stranger to Indianapolis. I went to Butler University some years ago for undergrad, and so it's been great to come back to the city. And the city has changed in so many ways. But to be a part of something, I think, very special, and not just with the Indianapolis Public Schools team, which I think this is a phenomenal team that we have here now. But I returned literally in the middle of the pandemic. So I started in June of 2020. And so we were figuring out how we were going to provide school for our 31,000 students within our district. We were also just really trying to figure out many of our different systems that, such as one-to-one instruction that we've had to do in the pandemic era, really figuring out the curriculum that we provide. How do we make sure that it's accessible to our students, both in school, but then also at home when they need it to be, and then also digitally. And so it's been a journey, a lot of lessons learned. But I do think that this is an important time to be doing the work, because I think we're learning things, all of us, whether you are a teacher in the classroom or an administrator, we're learning something about the future of education. I just think that it's just really important to be a part of this work at this time. Specifically, the work that I lead for the team is everything within our academics realm. So teaching and learning, our student support, special education, as well as our enrichment programs, athletics, our post-secondary readiness. So these are all the divisions under the district that really are providing that quality education for our students. And we're also really trying to look at things from an equity lens and see how do we provide those supports for students with keeping equity top of mind.
Yeah. Welcome back home. I guess we can say that. Yeah. And you hit on something really important that we're going to dive into a little while later, which is navigating this space during one of the most crucial points in our history. So, yeah, we're definitely going to dive in that a little bit later. But Ebony, same question for you about your leadership journey at Warren Township. What's that been like?
I would say interesting, and only because very fortunate to work in a district that has poured into me since a teacher. So I started out as an ELA teacher coming from IPS, as we had a backstory conversation. Also a product of IPS. That was in my bio. You forgot that part, Ebony. Yes, proud product of IPS.
The bio was so illustrious, I could only fit so much in, but yes, absolutely a good point. Yeah.
So coming from IPS, already with leadership experience, but as a teacher, though, also given opportunities and also a graduate of the IEPUI program. I'm doing so many plugs here, but it was a wonderful program. So coming in, my first month as a teacher, I was already doing PDs here in the district. Because I was given those opportunities. So since I've started, I've been given those opportunities to continue in leadership. But I will say,
and Ebony, really, PDs for people that
professional development.
Development.
Yes, Thank you. So I've been given those opportunities, and I know we'll touch on this topic later, but the pandemic, it teaches you something that you just don't learn, in any form of education. Makes you a stronger leader, but that's something that, you learn, and it also is something that you can't always prepare for. So that's why I say it's been very interesting. But also, I travel with my students, so I have approximately, give or take, 300 to 350 students. We travel with our students, so I've had them since sixth grade. And they're eighth graders now. And in the middle of our sixth grade year, we were all shut down for COVID. And so this year has been a very interesting year because it has challenged me in leadership in different ways, because the leader they may have seen prior to having to stay home is a totally different leader. And this is for my teaching staff as well. So, and that's for all of us. We are different educators, stronger, different, adaptable. And that different actually changes, seems like, from month to month or week to week.
Yeah, so much incredible change happening right now. And you provided the perfect segue, Ebony, to the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is how you all have attempted to navigate this crucial time. We're dealing not only with a global pandemic in the form of the coronavirus, but also lots of uprising, societal upheaval, and it feels oftentimes like the world is just completely like flipped upside down. How have you all navigated this in your professional roles? What's that been like?
I'd say for me, one thing that I have learned, and I'm pretty sure we all have learned, is the need for community. We say school community a lot, but we really understand at this point what school community really means. It is not just our students. It involves our parents. It involves our school resources. It involves our partnerships. And right now, those I guess those stakeholders in our community are more important than any professional development you could ever have, more important than any PBIS. Those are important, but I'm saying in regards to giving students those services, giving parents the services, the love, all those things, teachers as well. Giving all those things that they need is more important and highly important in order for us to survive right now. So it's taught us that, in essence, we all actually need each other. So when we say school community moving forward, this is what we mean. And this is how we're going to rely on each other.
Yeah, I'll jump in there. I think the biggest thing, in addition, I co-sign with everything that Ebony just said. I think it's a time for all of us to listen and learn. And this has taught us that none of us were prepared for what was really coming ahead of us, and really the answers come from community. So really going back to what Ebony shared, we need to listen and hear what our constituents need and want. I think it's a delicate balance, especially coming back this school year. This school year, in some ways, has felt a little bit more challenging than last school year, because there was so much anticipation in this year. It was like, this is the year for learning acceleration, and we're going to do all these programs, and we're going to get our kids back. And what we're realizing is we're going, and people are tired. It's felt like a year and a half, almost 2 years of just constantly going. And so it is the push in making sure we're providing everything for our kids, because our kids deserve it. We shouldn't be slowing down for our kids because of anything. Like they deserve the acceleration and everything we need to give to them. But then also making sure, how do we balance that with the whole child need, with the needs of our educators and wellness. And so I do think that this is a very pivotal moment in time where we have to rethink education, making sure that bar stays high in terms of the quality that we're providing, the access that we're providing, while also thinking about different ways we can do things so that we don't burn out, and that our kids don't burn out in the process.
I'll just add that I think that I thought a lot about the impact of what we've been going through and trying to lead through for the past year and a half on leaders, on us as leaders. In living through it, it feels like it's been a productive challenge in the sense of something we can grow from, of being adaptable and relying on teams and that kind of thing. But I think that, and it's hard to have perspective on this because I've only been doing this, so I don't know how this compares to how somebody who's a doctor or a social worker feels during this time. But it feels to me like there's just on school leaders a big burden of you already feel responsible for all these children in your care, and you are responsible for them as a school leader. I've always felt like it's there's a lot on your shoulders, and and in the past year and a half in particular, no matter what we did, people are just going to be having a hard time. And I went through cycles of putting that on myself, of really internalizing the pain that other people were feeling in ways that were probably not healthy, and then also trying to control more than I could control, right? Because we had to learn how to learn all the stuff about public health, and I tried to become a public health expert for a while, and then realized I needed to give that up and let some other people do that work. There was just a lot of push and pull over the past year that I think was just internally, personally challenging for a lot of us in educational leadership, and a lot of us are talking about, I think, just people potentially burning out of it after all this at every level, and that's certainly concerning. I'm not sure how much different that is than lots of other sectors in society either. So maybe it's just from what I can take from it at this point, and sometimes it feels like Warren said, we're still kind of in the middle of it, so maybe too early to assess. But we were reminded that we need to rely on each other, that as Ebony said, the community has taken on a much richer, deeper meaning in the last year and a half. And we do. I mean, we hold children in our care and in our lives in our hands in some level, and there's an intensity to that is that I think is just good to recognize as educators, to say this is what the work is, and how do we take care of each other in the challenging times of that, which is certainly this last year and a half. I think any educator who's been in it for a while has been the hardest year and a half of any of our professional lives.
Yeah. I just want to hold space for the vulnerability that was expressed in answering that, especially the point when I couldn't help but laugh. I sometimes find humor in things, but when you said you tried to be a public health expert and decided you needed to give that up, I just thought about so many people that attempted to add all these things to their plate because the need, it's like, we all knew that there was a great need on so many levels, especially educators, because of how proximate you are to a lot of the issues that we're dealing with as a community. And then sometimes how that need can become so overwhelming, you feel like I just need to do everything right now to try to solve it. But one thing that you all hit on that I think is critically important is that sense of community and understanding that there are multiple people that have to be included in the conversation in order for us to really see any true growth or progress. So, on that point about collaboration in practice, I would love to hear some examples, if you have any to share, of what that looks like during this time, that spirit of collaboration and bringing other people to the table to fill the needs that were present.
For Warren Township, we actually started last year, we opened the Moorhead Community Resource Center, which is a one-stop shop of almost just about every service you can think of. And some of our partners actually are located and housed at the resource center. So not only can we reach out to external organizations, we also have a place within the district where students and families can go. So Moorhead has been extremely beneficial and important, but also I've learned and I've tried to execute, but COVID has actually allowed us to be a lot more flexible with executing programs and services that once were, where students had to commute to get to those locations. And now they're more willing to actually come into our buildings. So it's allowed me to actually be a lot more flexible and a lot more, I guess, the opportunity is there to bring people into the building. So if I have something going on every day of the week, I'm happy with that, because that helps overall with student mental health and all the other things they may have going on at home, because a lot of our students unfortunately take on adult responsibilities when they don't have to, which causes stress, which causes academic stress, and which causes them to not perform and just be regular students, So just trying to help students be as regular as possible, during this time, still giving them those programs, still doing athletics and all those other things. So I've been able to just bring in programs. Right now we have Power and Promise through Voices Court coming in. We have, as administrator, I've started my own programs, just trying to make sure, and really is just getting back to the things we used to do, as school systems. So doing that and seeing the need that is more important, and those collaborations are a lot more important now than ever, has helped me a whole lot.
Yeah, community has been big in terms of just figuring out how we were going to move forward. I know last year we were standing up learning hubs because at a point in the year when we were closed, or and our buildings being closed, but education was open virtually for students who do it at home, we opened up learning hubs across our city where students could go and do their e-learning from those locations in case they were not able to do it from their home. We prioritize our McKinney-Vento students. Those are students who are experiencing homelessness. And then also some of our other students that just fit into different categories to really provide that support. Some of our students that actually needed to have someone instructing them, whether it is because of a high needs disability. We worked with our several community partners to stand up hubs across the city, as well as hubs across in some of our buildings. So that sense of the community rolling up their sleeves and saying, "Hey, how can we help?" That was very powerful, and it got us through a very hard time when we were trying to figure out how do we provide access to education for all of our students. Now the community still continues to really raise their hand to say, how can we help? I know the Indianapolis Colts was at one of our elementary schools. I think it was Lou Wallace a couple of weeks ago, doing a coat drive and many different things really to support the community. We have the partnership with Music for All where some of our students are going to be participating with that, somewhat to that point of getting things back to quote unquote regular or normal, whatever that is. But yeah, just really providing that for our students so they can really figure out how do we provide those continuity of supports. Because even though most things are open, I mean, all of our students have been back in school for a while now, there are still some restrictions. And so where our community has been able to provide those supports and come to the school or provide different resources to the schools, it has been very helpful.
Yeah, I'll just first to second what Warren said. When I look at the big picture of the whole city, I think the most inspiring collaboration examples is just to see, I'm an IPS parent, which gives me a view on this too, that it's been inspiring to see how many people have reached out to help with the access issues from the beginning. Like, does everybody have wireless access at home, and the companies that stepped up for that? Does everybody have food access, and the way that IPS and partners manage that, the learning labs, all the different resources that have been brought to bear for the kids who need it most. The pandemic has hit hardest. That's been really inspiring from a citywide perspective of how people have stepped up to help kids and education. And in the Brebeuf context, I'll to give you another angle on it. We've tried to, over the years, I think educators will, welcome parents in ways that are kind of, that we're comfortable with. And they're sometimes limited because, it's sometimes it makes things more difficult in the teachers, experience in some cases. But in the last year and a half, I feel like a lot of our staff and faculty have done a better and better job in kind of trying to almost push against the grain. Like, it felt like people couldn't come into the school for a little bit, but then it's like, okay, let's invite people in even more intentionally, parents in particular, for things like classroom support, for just even like, simple support for student events, for school spirit, for supportive school spirit. We've tried to tap into that. Our staff here has done a great job of tapping into that and are trying to make that whole community, like Ebonye was saying, feel more holistic of everybody involved as a response to the pandemic need that was there. Like, let's all wrap our arms around the kids and let's do it together. So that's been inspiring to see in our own building.
So many inspiring stories. So again, kudos to all of you for your leadership in those moments, and to your teams as well, because we know that these things don't happen in a silo. It takes a lot of collaboration inside, outside, on all points to make these things happen. We had a question come through the comments. Greg, I'll pose it to you first and then open it up to the room. But Wendy Mabry wanted to know, what do you feel about the efficacy of project-based learning as a school model? Will traditional learning ever be replaced wholly or partly with project-based learning models? I'll have you start, Greg, and then we'll open it up to Ebonye and Dr. Morgan as well.
Sure. I think project-based learning is awesome. And I think the more and more teachers are adopting project-based learning approaches, rightfully so, and either as a program as a whole, for a curriculum, for a class, or just for, individual activities, for especially, if it's with science labs or even, mathematics learning, or, classroom discussions on issues of deep issues of, ethics and things like that, values. So it's, I think it's just one of those long-term trends in education that will keep, I think, being more and more that way. It's a very engaging method for students. I think, the payoff of it from the sense of student development and ownership and engagement and their cognitive development is all positive. So yeah, it can be sometimes just a shift. There's ingrained practices can take a while to shift, and you see a little bit of that in terms of what she mentioned about will traditional education be replaced? I think it's one of those where project-based learning approaches will probably more and more be adopted into the way we do things in the classroom. You see that to some degree already, and I think that's the way it'll continue.
Sit and get is something that I would love to retire. And if you're a traditional learner, you know what sit and get is. Works for some, but not for all. Personally, I'm a sit and get person. I like to hear you talk. I like to take notes. But when it comes to education now, I think project-based learning is tremendous because it touches on multiple intelligences. You have students that want to draw it out. You have students that want to be a part of that project and they're doing the artwork. You have those students that are going to be the speakers, because that's what they naturally do. And so it helps you to get buy-in from students that have, and it gives them options and choice. And I think that today in education, students need a buy-in, they need a voice, and project-based learning actually gives them the opportunity to have a voice, whether it's with their skills and talents from an artistic level, or you're doing the planning and the strategy. So it allows students to, and you'll get a lot more, buy-in, but you get a lot more return of investment, and it becomes a reward for students because, I play a role in this. One good example, I used to, as an English teacher, project-based learning was my thing. So every November, this month is National Homeless Youth Awareness Month. So every November, and we use a lot of different campaigns, but every November, we're definitely doing that. So, who's making posters to bring awareness? Okay, we have our artists in the room. Now we still have an essay. Everybody's going to write an essay because this is still English class. But we're going to present. So we have speakers. Everybody has a role. And not only that, we're also introducing and we're allowing students in the building to experience and be aware that there's an issue and they can support. Because we have a lot of peers. Dr. Morgan mentioned McKinney-Vento students. There's a lot of homeless families and students that don't even realize they're homeless, in buildings. So I think project-based learning, like I said, that's my thing. That's my jam, as some teachers say. So if we could, if students teachers or schools adopt it, it goes a whole lot better than just sitting and getting as we used to get in the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Yeah, I don't have much more to add. I echo everything that my colleagues have shared. I also will state, project-based learning was here prior to the pandemic. This was a lot of different practices that we as educators have been working on. I think the biggest thing as we continue to move towards project-based learning is really making sure that skills embedded instruction is still embedded within the projects that we're doing, and really making sure that we have a strong way of assessing how our students are progressing through the project-based learning models. And so I think that's a good blend of both the project-based learning model, but also the traditional model, just so that as we're doing many of the projects, we can still be sure that our students are still picking up the skills and are understanding, just like, as Ebony mentioned, like they start to write, like, there's English class, so we're going to be writing, and there's, rubrics that go along with that. And so I think us as educators, making sure we train our educators how to take the traditional methods, embed it within a project-based learning model. I think that will help us as we move forward.
Thank you all for your responses there. As we begin to wrap up our conversation, there's a lot being discussed about building back better and what the future looks like. John Brady provided a great question for us to explore when it comes to this. He says, Dr. Morgan, or John says rather, Dr. Morgan, you mentioned learning about the future of education over these last months. If you had a crystal ball, what are a couple of the lasting paradigm shifts you would expect to still see in 5 to 10 years? So I want to kind of meld John's question with the Build Back Better question. We'll start with you, Dr. Morgan, and then open it up to Ebony and Greg as well.
Yeah, that's a great question, John. I believe, so one of the things that I think is amazing that came out of this is the fact that now, I know across most districts in our city, I think probably all of our districts in the city, every kid has a device that they can access instruction with. If you were to ask me just 4 years ago how long it would take one-to-one instruction, I probably would have said maybe we're 15, 20 years off from that. And it's amazing how a crisis can get you into action and you can move forward. So I think that is something that is amazing. Now every student has a device. It is now going to shift how we do instruction. And this goes a little bit about that the last question. Now that all students have devices, they can access information. what is the need for that sit and get, or students just sitting there and doing a worksheet or what have you, the way that we were educated many years ago. You can propose a essential question to students and say, hey, this is the essential question, this is the prompt, this is the way you're going to be assessed on it, figure it out. And I think that is an amazing way of how education is going to shift. And when you look at our higher performing schools, and I mean, Greg, you could probably even note this, a lot of these practices have been in a lot of our private schools and higher performing schools for years. And so now it's just a matter of us really just catching up and really figuring out, okay, how do we provide this and how do we provide the structures? But it's easier said than done because the bar still has to be there. You can look into a classroom that looks busy and engaging where lots of students are having fun. And that's great. We want learning to be fun. But if the bar is not there, you still walk away and you're like, man, the kids still are not able to do the skills that they need to be on grade level. So I think that 5 to 10 years from now, if I had a crystal ball, we would still be moving in this direction of digital instruction, but we would expand it where we're now really moving more towards independent models and students really engaging in their own learning with that high bar there.
I'll pick up on that just to, because I agree with everything that Warren said, and I think the other piece is just kind of dissolving a little bit the boundaries between school and not school, where for children the world is a place for learning, and developmentally that's how they experience it up until when they get to school, and then all of a sudden school is the place for learning, and then we define what that means for them and put it in a box. Go back to my box metaphor. So I think the pandemic will end up long term looking back and saying like this was accelerated the change in education towards more learning outside of the classroom, and even structuring that into our programs for students, giving them opportunities to complete their formal education, not necessarily within the school walls, in ways that are really powerful for them. So you see that happening. You saw that happening a little bit before the pandemic. And I think the pandemic will probably end up accelerating it because people have experienced it at some level. They've tried to work through it, and sometimes it's been hard to work through from the parent side and from the school side. But I think like the technology kind of acceleration, it'll accelerate that trend as well. And then the other thing I would add is I think we'll keep the focus on thinking about the health of the student. We've had to think so much about student health in the past year and a half. That now, ingrained in us even better, I think, is thinking about their mental health and their physical health in really intentional, thoughtful ways. Thinking of that as part of our job, which I think it should be. And it's not all about us, but it's part of our job, and it's part of key student supports. And I think you're seeing that in schools everywhere. You're seeing some resistance to it as well, as we haven't gotten into the fights about social emotional learning, which are going on right out there as part of the political divisions and strife in society. But I think we'll come out of it. I'm optimistic that we'll come out of it with a better appreciation of the role of caring for all aspects of the student's health as part of their education, and our ability to do that as schools.
One of the, I think, Build Better, one of the most important, I would say, is how, we've used to say all the time, and it's always said that students are in school most of their day. They're with us more than they're with their parents. And I think that, especially when students had to go home and learn at home, with parents, and then parents are like, all right, when is it time to send them back? And they understand, now, I think our parents have a better understanding of what that looks like, and a better maybe appreciation, and we have a better appreciation for each other. And just how essential school is to the core of what students are doing throughout their day, and how important schools are to even settling a lot of issues at home that are not even they're linked to academics, but at the same time, we can actually assist with a parent who have utility issues, a parent that needs a babysitter, that doesn't have one. All of those things. And I think families have a better understanding of how much school actually plays a role in a child's, in the quality of their life, while they're with us or without. So I think the relationship between us and parents, I think, is stronger and will continue to be stronger, in the appreciation of school and our role in their child's life, I think, is better and will continue to be better. And I think we can just build on that and continue. And then also start including parents back into decisions. It's a part of most of our school improvement plans, and that was my point too. Our school improvement plans, I think they will look different from this point forward, which will include more of parental involvement, not just parent student night, family night, but no, I want your voice and I need your input in the decisions that we make as a school corporation.
Yeah. So many wonderful things to look forward to. I love the connection that I'm seeing in terms of the school stepping back into its place as a pillar of a community, as opposed to being just this place that I send my kids to, that, and that just being the end of the relationship, but it really becoming a part of the community. It makes me think about what things were like when I was growing up. I actually went to Lew Wallace for a tiny bit as a kid. And I just remember being at the building all the time for one thing or another, outside of just going to school. So love to hear that. We have a couple of minutes, so I'm able to squeeze in just one more question. And this is about leadership lessons that have helped guide you. So to bring us full circle from where we started about your specific journeys at your organizations. But if you could each share just one leadership lesson that has helped to guide you and inform how you lead. And Ebony, I will get started with you.
I'll be quick. One leadership lesson that I've learned is my mental health is highly important. And it impacts just like a trickle down effect, on everybody else. Leaders, one thing that if you're in leadership, and even teachers, we understand that you got to be the one that knows how to compose, that doesn't lose their, at least not in front of everybody. And one of the hardest, most stressful things to do is to be that person that doesn't lose their, in front of an audience. So it's taught me to continue to be strong in that area as a leader, and but also vulnerable. It's okay to let people know that I don't know, or I'm figuring it out, or this is a lot. It's okay. So I've just learned, as far as just taking care of myself, that's highly important.
Guess I'll hop in here. For me, I would say humility is very important. Leadership is tough, and I think right now, it's just hard on all fronts. No matter what you're leading, it's just really, really tough because there's so many demands and expectations, so many different things that you're balancing in terms of just stakeholder needs. And so just having that humility to be able to listen and step in and know that you don't have all the answers is key. And then I think really closely connected to that, being grounded in something, whether that is, things that you're doing for your own mental health, or your physical fitness, whether it's your faith, having something to just bring you back, because it is really tough. And there are multiple things you'll be listening to and hearing in the moment. And you just need to be grounded and feel confident in whatever pathway you go forward when you make that decision. And I think that that's something I've learned along the way.
I'll be quick also. In education, I'm always telling kids, you make a mistake and you learn from it. You get a bad grade. What'd you learn from that? You messed up in terms of something, behavior. What'd you learn from that? How are you moving forward? That's in the past. How are you moving forward? And that is also fundamental to me for leadership and for my mental health as a leader, something I need to keep reminding myself of. And I think for an educational leader, adopting that learning orientation to your own work is good role modeling as well. So for me, the number one lesson in educational leadership is just give yourself a learning orientation and remind yourself that every mistake you make and every experience you go through is something what did I learn from that? And where am I going from here? And then put it in the past.
Thank you all so much for a lovely, lovely conversation. I feel like we learned so much about not only your individual journeys, but about some of the great things that are being done to ensure that education in our city is the best that it can possibly be. So thank you all so much for everything that you're doing. Ebonye Crowe from MSD of Warren Township, Dr. Warren Morgan of IPS, and Greg Van Slambrook of Brebeuf Jesuit. Thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you very much. Great to be with you all.
Thank you.
And thank you to each and every one of you for tuning in to this episode of the Convo, where we talked with leaders in education here in the city of Indianapolis. We will be having another Convo next Tuesday, where we will focus on the leadership stories of our time. And we will hear from a diverse group of civic leaders who represent various industries and viewpoints, discussing where we've been and what it takes to move our community forward in a meaningful way. We're going to hear from Cecily Brickley of the Jean B. Glick Company, Julie Goodman of Arts Council of Indianapolis, Michael Huber of the Indy Chamber, and Tony Mason from the Indianapolis Urban League. Once again, thank you all so much for tuning in. You can learn more about Leadership Indianapolis at leadershipindianapolis.com. Have a great day.